Welcome to this new mPulse UI deep dive. In this deep dive, we will take a look at chart color themes and why these are required to make it easy to digest the data your charts are presenting to you, and along the way, make your dashboards attractive and pleasant to work with. Color themes are maybe something that many will not pay that much attention to, but when they're used well, they can really enhance the legibility of your charts. And they also give you a degree of some freedom to decide how your charts will appear in your dashboards. There is a small family of color theme types, and each is useful or sometimes even mandatory for certain types of charts. These types are categorical multi-hue, categorical mono-hue, gradient multi-hue, and gradient mono-hue. Let's quickly see what each of these is used for and how to use them in your charts. So we produced this dashboard to give you some examples of how color themes are, in some cases, pretty much mandatory for certain charts, and in other cases, they can be optional. What we've tried to do in each case is give you a very good default, but of course, you can obviously change the chart themes in most circumstances. There are a couple of places where it's hard-coded, and we'll go through that here in these examples. So the first one I wanted to show you is that the donut chart here is using a theme, and we'll go into the chart and edit it. And if you look at this drop down, or in this case drop up, you'll see that we're using categorical A. Now, the most important thing about a categorical color scheme is that each color that follows the first is noticeably different from the previous colors. So you can see that we've got blue, then purple, then yellow, then green, then red. So for the first 5 colors of this categorical theme, the differences between each color are very, very strong. Obviously, as you add more and more colors to the categorical scheme, there's a lower chance over time that you're going to have a unique color because there are only so many colors in the rainbow. We can get around this by using different saturations of each color, or hue, as we call them. You can use different saturations and different luminosities, in other words, dark blue, light blue. But at the end of the day, there are only so many colors, and you get diminishing returns when you have too many items in your categorical theme. And it's for that reason that we would probably recommend that you not have too many series in your charts, because even though categorical themes do a good job of differentiating between the first few series, once you get up to 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 series, you're going to find it pretty hard to understand which color pertains to which time or metric. Now, you can actually change this. We've supplied another multi-hued categorical. We've only supplied 2. And we've tried to design it so that the 2 don't correspond with each other if you want to use them together. But because they are both multi-hued, multicolored, that's pretty difficult. And you're going to find that when you have 2 charts together and they're both categorical multi-hued, it's not going to be very easy to read the 2. Let's show you an example of that. If we go back to the dashboard, just wait for it to render. This combo chart, it's actually using 2 categorical themes. So we'll just go and edit that and have a look at it. The important thing to remember about a combo chart is it's basically 2 different charts combined together, hence the name combo chart. Because you have to combine 2 different charts, one of them has to be a background chart and the other one has to be a foreground chart. In other words, one of the charts will overlay the other chart. So in this case, if you look at the y-axis, you can see that it's the background chart. And the front axis is y2. We've set up the rear axis that acts as the background in this case, as an area, and we've set up the foreground as a line. And the reason why I've done that is because then it's much easier to see a background layer through a line chart than it is to see a line chart through an area chart. Now, for a combo chart, we found that using, let me show you, 2 multi-hued categorical color schemes, it becomes quite hard to read. And the reason for that is, if you look at this chart theme, then you have blue, purple, yellow. You've got a yellow here, and you've got a green here, and you've got a green here. I've used a slightly different green, you can see, to try and differentiate between the 2. But it's going to be pretty diminishing returns. And the more series you add to each layer, the harder it is to discern which color belongs to which. For that reason, we've used mono themes. So in this case, a blue mono theme for the background, and an orange yellow mono theme for the foreground. So this is where mono themes come into their own. They're good because they're very distinct from each other. You've got a foreground layer which is using yellows and oranges, and a background layer which is using shades of blue, and therefore they're distinct from each other. So that's the reason why we have multi-hued categorical schemes and mono-hued categorical schemes. Seems like quite a fine point, but when you actually see it in practice, it actually makes a lot more sense why we've done that. If we go and have a look at a line chart, this chart here, you'll see that it's actually just a categorical A again. The reason why it's blue is because it's a single series, so it just uses the first color in the theme. If we change it to categorical B, it's going to be green because the first color is green. One of the mono themes is going to be the first mono theme color. You can, if you wish, obviously, for your line charts, your area charts, and your bar charts, you can choose any of these themes, and you can just use them as a basic way of adding a bit more visual variety to your dashboards. That's perfectly valid, and it's very easy to read. So maybe you might want to have a few more colors in your dashboards, and that's perfectly valid. But when you start layering charts, it's a good idea to use mono themes and choose two mono themes that actually contrast with each other. Those are the categorical mono and multi-hued themes. And now we have a couple more themes, and this is a little bit more sort of nuanced. The map is actually using a gradient. In this case, it's using a gradient, which is what I would call monohued. In other words, it's just different shades of blue. And the reason for that is because this particular chart is showing decoded body size. Decoded body size is just a measurement of kilobytes. So you can't really infer any performance from that. It's just a plain metric, which might be useful in certain circumstances, but you can't really judge performance from just a straightforward metric, which is just a measurement of data downloaded. So in this case, we've used a mono color theme to just indicate the range of data, the range of values that's been downloaded. And you can see it just ranges from 12.5 to 12.9 kilobytes. So it's quite a small range in this case, but because of the contrast in color, you can actually discern where you're getting the larger values. If we go over to this other map, we're using quite a different gradient here. In this case, it's a multi-hued gradient, and the colors that have been chosen are RAG colors. In other words, red, amber, and green. Red is poor performance, amber is moderate performance, okay, and green is optimal performance. This is really where you want your website to be. We use those colors in other places in the UI. So for instance, in the summary chart down here, we're using the same amber color. In fact, we're using the same gradient, but in this case, we're doing a linear interpolation. And what that means is you don't get a smooth gradient like you see here. What you get is definitive cutoff points when you go from one threshold to another. So when you go from red and you reach the amber threshold, it will immediately switch to amber. So you're going to end up with a large band of amber. And then when it switches over to good performance, again, you're going to have quite a large range of green. So when you look at a summary chart, you're not going to see these colors in between. You're only ever going to see this red, this amber, or this green. But it's still an actual gradient, a multi-hued gradient, because it's using more than one hue. In other words, red, amber, and green, they're all different hues. That's it, really. So basically, themes are there in your charts to help you produce attractive looking dashboards, but primarily they're there to convey the information. And you've always got to be aware that if you want to change the theme on any of your charts, that's perfectly valid, but be careful because you don't want to choose a color scheme that doesn't work with other things. It's particularly important inside a combo chart where you're layering two charts on top of each other. But with the map charts, for instance, you can't actually choose the themes because it's actually decided for you automatically. If it has performance values, it's going to use the RAG colors that you can see here. And if it's just a pure metric, it's just a measurement of a value, it's just going to use one of the monohue themes like you can see here. For a donut chart, obviously you can choose any of the categorical color schemes because it's generally easy to tell them apart. There is a bit of a diminishing return with monohue themes in that it's hard to tell those colors apart because they're just sticking to one hue, just green and yellows. Obviously, with multi-hue, you can have much bigger differences. So I would stick to using multi-hued categorical themes for donut charts and single series line charts and multi-series line charts, area charts and bar charts. But when you start using any of those charts in a combo chart, then I would probably switch over to using mono hue themes because they just work better when they're laid on top of each other.